My next guest is a professional mixed martial artist, and he happens to be one of my favorite commentators in regional MMA. And he joins me right now ahead of his fight on November 19th at Anthony Pettis FC 9. Mr. David Evans joins me right now. David, welcome to the show. I'm a fan of your work in the booth, and I'm a fan of you in the cage as well.
Thank you, Tyler. Appreciate you having me, man. The fact that I'm your favorite regional, I mean, that's a big deal right there, man. I appreciate that.
Well, I will tell you, I watch a lot of regional MMA, and I think you and Ben Davis are a fantastic duo. You guys complement each other really well, and I'm hoping I could just ask you about Ben right off the cuff. A unique, an interesting guy. A lot of people like to make fun of Ben, and I can understand why because of his foray into combat sports. But he's a brilliant mind, and he knows exactly what he's doing in the booth. What makes him such a interesting guy to work with?
Man, Ben is just, I think he's a great guy, just all around. You know, he definitely has the energy. You know, it's easy to kind of work with him, man. The way I look at it is like I play second fiddle to him, man. He has his own persona, he has his own style, and he's individually himself. And once we get together, we're in sync and we just feed off each other. I like to think, you know, he's there to run the show, and I'm just there to kind of look good and maybe say something intelligent here and there.
You say a lot of things that are intelligent, and one of the things that's very unique about you is you can break down the highly technical into ways that somebody like me, I can understand what you're saying. Like, hey, this is exactly what he wants to do, or this is what's happening. This is what he needs to do to get out of a submission. And I can understand exactly what it is that you're trying to explain to your audience. And I was kind of hoping I can pick up there. What is one of the things about the commentary work that you find incredibly rewarding and challenging?
For me, to be honest, it's fun. I'm a fighter. I love to compete and everything like that. But there's just something about me being able to mentally break down a fight that's beneficial to me, like intrinsically, like I enjoy doing it. But I mean, I'd be lying if I said I didn't use it as an outlet to constantly get mental reps and constantly refresh and keep myself in the game while I'm not in the game. So I definitely in the future see a pivot from there. As far as the struggle, I think it's just really I think it's like when you try anything in life, it's like I'm still trying to find myself in it. And you know, when I get feedback like what you just gave to me, it makes me feel secure and know that I'm on the right path. And I think just with time, as I grow into it, as I grow into the sport as a commentator, as I grow into the sport as a fighter, it'll all come together, and I feel confident with it. I can't say that there's a struggle because I'm truly blessed to be able to do both simultaneously.
I bring that up because you remind me of Sean O'Connell, and I was wondering, you fought in the PFL most recently. Did you ever have kind of like an opportunity to chat with him maybe about, the whole, I don't know if dilemma is the right word, but just the whole construct of being a fighter and commentating simultaneously? Because obviously Sean did that too.
No, I actually, I think we may have just, you know, had a few words in passing. Who I talked to actually recently was Kenny Florian. He actually came up to me because he did an interview prior to the PFL fight, and you know, he did his homework. I mean, the guy's a professional. He's one of the top out there right now, and you know, he actually came to me because I'm in fight mode, and I'm like thinking like, oh, he's probably gonna ask me a bunch of fighting questions. He's like, yo, I saw you commentating, and we just kind of had this back and forth, and I definitely wanted to kind of pick his brain a little bit more, but I was definitely getting prepared for a fight as well. So, I mean, I keep him in the back pocket as far as somebody that I plan to reach out to. Alan Joban, who actually commentated some of the UFC stuff, and he did my LFA fight. He's very familiar with him and Dean Thomas, who's one of my trainers. They have a very good relationship, and me and him just kind of connected. So I watched Kenny, I watched Alan Joban, I watched some guys from a distance right now. I know they know who I am. They're aware who I am from a fighter as a commentator perspective. So those are guys that I definitely plan to reach out to in the future.
One of the things that I find is really interesting is, especially in the internet era, everyone thinks that it's easy to be in front of a microphone. It's easy to have your own podcast. It's easy to have people like you on the show and be like, oh, okay, cool. Well, he said he'll come on the show. I better make it good now. Like, people think it's not much of a challenge, and I always say you should try it then. That's the beauty of 2023 is nothing stopping you, man. Like if you think you could do a better job than me, I won't take it personally. Go ahead and try to do a better job than me. Go out there, start your own platform, put yourself out there, get fighters on your show, and come back to me in 6 months and we'll see where you're at. And I kind of wanted to ask you, like most people understand, like fighting is a really tough thing to do. Not a lot of people can do it. I would also say the exact same thing, being on the media angle of it. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone can have a podcast. And for fighters that are interested maybe in getting into the media side of it, do you have any sort of like tips or lessons that you've learned from doing this that they might be able to benefit from?
Yeah, it's definitely not easy, as you and I both know. I would say for me, as far as how I approach the game and how I approach, everything that I do, I always say how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so with fighting and the commentating being synonymous for me, I think the biggest thing that I've learned, and Dean Thomas actually kind of put this in my brain, is like not being able, or being able to just make a fool of yourself, and like the strength that that can give you. And once I got to that point where I'm just like, hey, I'm going to go out, I'm going to be unequivocally me at all times, but I'm not going to put this pressure on myself to be perfect. It's just like in a fight. If I go out there in 2 weeks and I'm like, I need every second of every round to be a highlight video, chances are it's not going to be a good night for me. What I need to do is I need to go out and be David. I need to go out, do the things that I've trained, and just be me organically. So whether it's fighting, whether it's media, whether it's working a corporate job, I actually do work a full-time job where I'm in a leadership management position as well. I do the media and I fight. And one thing that I can always say is whenever I step into my office, or whenever I step on set, whenever I step, into an octagon or a cage, I'm going to be me, and I'm just going to lay it all out there, and I'm going to take away the pressure of trying to create the narrative, and I'm going to let everybody else do that. And so with the mindset of just knowing that, hey, I may make a fool of myself, but it's not the end of the world. And I've gotten this far, so I've gotten this far with that mentality, and it's carried me this far. So that's pretty much all I can say.
Hey, I empathize with that. Nobody look at the first 100 episodes of this show. Like, don't watch them. They're so god awful. And David, let's shift a little bit and talk more about your fighting career. You've been doing this for a decade. I know your professional resume. We don't have a lot of fights on that professional resume yet, but you've been doing this for a very long time. You fought in IMAFs before. That's kind of where I first started hearing about your name from the amateur scene. And then just as you've turned the page and as you've gone down this professional path of being a prize fighter now, you've gone up against some of the toughest guys on the regional MMA circuit. But I wanted to like zoom out even further. A decade of fights. I mean, that's a feat in and of itself. And I know this journey is still just kind of getting started for you. But as a man, what have you learned about yourself doing this for 10 plus years?
Well, I mean, when you say a decade, I'm like, damn, I'm getting old now. But I mean, that's just kind of the weird contradiction I live in, because I have been doing this at a high level from an amateur from the inception for so long. But I'm also still young in the career. I'm still young in life. A lot of people say your life doesn't even start till you get to 30, and I'm just trying to like balance like both of those things. I think through all of my experiences so far, what I've learned is I have to go back and kind of mirror what I said not too long ago, is just really just being yourself and taking control. I think when I was younger in the game, in the fight game, and just in life, I would get opportunities and I would position myself in opportunities, and I would wait for that opportunity to come. Or when the opportunity came, I would wait for someone else or lean on someone else to put me in a position to succeed in that opportunity. But now I'm in a place to where it's like, you know, I can be more confident in myself and just put myself in positions to win. When I get to certain spaces and certain places, I can be more aggressive about getting what I want out of these situations. Whether it's stepping into the cage, like when I walk into Milwaukee, I gotta own that entire arena from the second I walk in to the second I leave, and I gotta make sure that I do what I need to do to put myself in a place where I can confidently walk in that cage and perform, but then also walk out and get everything that's owed to me. And that's just where I'm at in life. And it's not necessarily that I have to be aggressive or be a rude person, but I need to be a little bit more selfish and control my destiny a little bit more.
Most recently, you fought Brian Zurcher at the PFL Challenger Series, an incredibly tough opponent. And I know that fight isn't exactly how you wanted it to go. And we've had a few months to reflect on that one. What if, when you go back and you rewatch that fight today, months later, like what are some things that you saw? Did you see, number one, things that you did that you liked? And then number two, what were some things that you identified that, you know what, these are the things we want to work on?
Well, I mean, the thing is, so the funny thing about Brian, like the dude's phenomenal. He's great. I think he's going to be the future of the sport. I think if he doesn't get bigger, he's a big guy. If he stays at 45, and I've always been a 35er, but I've always just been talented and skilled enough to fight at 45. There's a chance we could cross paths again, and that was an interesting matchup for me because I spent a lot of time out at Extreme Couture. We've trained together a number of times. We sparred a number of times. There were a number of days where I'm like, I got the better of him. So going into that fight, the problem actually is the fight went exactly how I wanted it to go. But kind of like I was just saying, like sometimes when you go into a fight and you think everything has to go A, B, C, D according to plan, I didn't have the best game plan. I left that fight with a great performance, but I left that cage not doing the one thing that I'm best at. And there should never be, a point in any fight where I walk into a fight and I'm like, okay, I didn't even pull out my A game. Like we were striking. I knew he was going to be a tough opponent. I felt like I could hit him very well. I knew he was good on the ground. So I kind of got in my head and we devised a game plan to like, I'm going to do what I need to do to prevent him from doing what he needs to do to win. And I stopped focusing on what I needed to do to win. So when I go back to those sparring rounds, a few times I've taken him down or, handling him on my feet and working into my wrestling game, I left all of that off the table. So it just kind of put me in a position of where I was starting a step or two behind because I was just very relaxed and I was waiting for that opportunity. I was waiting to just strike and for him to get tired because I know he wears guys out. And like that's the thing about him, man. That guy has a gas tank like I've never seen before. I've seen guys get tired hitting him, and he could take so much. So I was just like, all right, I'm not gonna come out and be explosive. I'm not gonna come out and be aggressive with my wrestling. I'm not gonna come out and be aggressive with my striking. I'm going to wait to the half or the latter part of the second period and then turn it up in the third period and just go from there. But that's not guaranteed to come. And as we saw, that's what happened because that put me in a position to where I'm constantly on the back foot and I'm always better when I get off first.
At what point do you enter dialogue with APFC about fighting on Anthony Pettis 9? Now, obviously, you've done some work with them on multiple occasions in the booth, so I'm sure there's been a ton of conversation like, yo, David, like, what's up, man? We really want you to fight for us. Like, at what point do you actually start having those conversations with them in earnest to make this fight happen?
Oh, I've always known it was coming down the road. As far as I'm concerned, it was just a matter of a phone call and the right timing for me, most importantly. Just coming off of the PFL, I'm like, okay, I didn't get the result that I wanted. However, I left Universal Studios with rave reviews about the fight, and that was bittersweet for me to deal with. And I think it was about 2 to 3 months after the fight till I really could like watch it, and I'm like, oh, this was. I get what people are talking about. This was actually a great fight, okay, and I can appreciate it in that sense. So I'm like, in order to get back on track, I need a few things. I needed to be on a big stage. I need a tough opponent, and I need the event to match the hype that I want to live up to for this fight. And it just lined up. It started to get a little too long where I get into that 5 6 months range where I haven't fought, and I'm like, I just need to do something anyway. But I just needed to make sense in all directions. And so once I got the word from APFC, and they reached out to me about it, it was no question. I'm comfortable with the platform. I know everyone there. I know it literally now from the inside out. So I'm just excited to go in there with a different hat, so to speak, and just continue to add value to APFC and what they're building, and build myself alongside them in both ways.
You'll be fighting at 135 pounds this time, and that's something that you've kind of alluded to already. Previously, we were fighting at 145 pounds. At what point does that switch flip off in your brain? Like, you know what, we're going to go down a weight class for our next fight.
Well, I've always known I've been undersized at 145. It just seems like, man, the 45ers are getting taller and they're getting bigger. I mean, when I remember training at Extreme Couture and like watching Brian Zercher before I even knew I was gonna fight him. You know, it's just, I always say, you walk into a gym, I get along with people very well, and it's like real recognize real. So those guys recognize those guys. So even before, fighting him was even a thought, like I'm like, okay, this is some guy, when we're sparring, I gotta find him a round. Like one round, I at least gotta get one round with him. And I remember watching him get on the scale. We talking about like 180, like, hey, he's big. I mean, he feels big, but I mean, I felt that quite a bit, but I've always felt like I was strong enough, fast enough to compete. And I still feel that way. But for me in my career right now, I feel like it's time for me to go up to that next level. The regional scene has been great, but I need to start speaking it into existence. And I, most importantly, got to start making it happen, and going down to 135 is the first really big, real move to say that, hey, I'm here and I'm here to stay and I'm here to be part of that 1%. So I have to trim the fat literally and figuratively. I can't leave any room for anything else to happen but for me to be successful. And so that's me strategically going down to 135. Uh, it's not going to be as comfortable. It's not terribly, terribly hard. I'm not dying. I'm in a good position weight wise. I feel good training. So why not? If I want to be at the elite level, I know what I have to do, and making that adjustment is just that.
The man that you'll be sharing the cage with, his name is Dre Miley. Now, he's a vet of the game from Tennessee. He trains out of Knoxville MMA. He has almost 20 professional fights of experience under his belt. So you'll be making the walk against somebody who has a ton of experience. I think he's a pretty well-rounded guy. I would say I would call him a freestyle fighter, in my opinion. But when you look at Dre Miley, what are the things that you see about him?
That experience is important. I grew up wrestling. That's how I started wrestling and boxing at 12, but I got really good at wrestling really fast. And one of my coaches always kind of bred into me the mentality is, it's like, once you get to that elite level, once you get to that college level, everybody's a state champion, everybody's an All-American, everybody's a national champion. So when you go to this big tournament and you're wrestling this guy, I'm coming for your state title. It's like, I got to come for that experience at this level. I can't just go out there with anybody. I got to constantly push the envelope to not only prove to the people that are making the decisions on where my future is going to be, but to myself that, hey, I belong at this elite level. And so when you have a guy like Dre Miley, super experienced, he's tough, well rounded. I mean, I think it's a good matchup for me to wake up to and be motivated about.
Absolutely. And David, like when you think about you, I was just going to ask you about like wrestling because that's the discipline. I would consider you a wrestling based MMA fighter. I know you can do it all, but that's first and foremost kind of the discipline I associate with you. And when you go up against somebody like Dre Miley, when you're looking at it, it's like, okay, well, obviously, like he knows that. He knows he's a smart guy. He knows that you're a good wrestler too. So he's probably been drilling takedown defense. And one of the things I always like try to like think about was like somebody from your skill set is like, do you almost have to make it a point to like really mix it up and like stay unpredictable in there? I know everyone always talks about doing that, but it's the wrestlers I look for. I look at that for because I'm just kind of like, I don't know, that wrestling going shooting for those takedowns. It's a comforting thought. And sometimes we see wrestlers make mistakes and get in trouble in there going for ill-advised takedowns, or they blow everything they have in the tank trying to get a takedown that's not there. So I always kind of think like with the wrestling, it's like you really have to stay super disciplined. So you got to make sure that you're not on the side of that.
It's the opposite. So I spent a lot of time working at Rufus Sport in Milwaukee with Duke Rufus, Scott Cushman, that whole team there. For years, I've been going out there since Tyron Woodley was doing his camps, and I'm riding his coattails in the training camp 6, 7, 8 weeks or whatever. But one thing they always teach is like, hey, you punch when you have to punch, you kick when you have to kick, you grapple when you have to grapple. So that's just how I've trained for the last 6, 7 years. It's like I've really been a student of the game and that ideology to where I want to take the path of least resistance. So if the wrestling is there, I'm going to wrestle. If I can touch them and put my hands on them, I'm going to do that. If I got to sit back for a minute and wait and counter, I'm going to do that. If I have to pressure forward, I'm going to do that. I'm so confident in my skills and my IQ that I'll be able to trust and feel once I get my hands on them. And that's with anybody. And fortunately, through like you talked about my IMAF experience earlier, that really, really helped me. It's like going through those tournaments. It's like, all right, I'm in Europe for a week. I have 5 fights. I don't know who I'm fighting day to day to day. This country could be good at jiu-jitsu. This country got the best striker. All right, I'm in the semifinals. I'm going against the #1 boxer from Ireland who's fighting for the PFL, the inaugural 35 championship. It's just like you got to be ready for whatever, and you can't predict what's coming because it's all results based from the day before. And so I put myself in a position from early on, just learning wrestling and boxing simultaneously. I always had a good base. So even through the tournaments, when I came up against the grapplers, I was able to outstrike the best grapplers. When I came against the best strikers, I was able to out wrestle and out grapple the best strikers. When I came into somebody that was fully balanced, okay, what am I great? What am I great at that's going to separate me? So I've been able to make those decisions, and I've had to make those decisions on the fly. So I'm comfortable anywhere and everywhere. I'm a professional mixed martial artist and a prize fighter. So I'm going to do what I have to do. I'm going to fight the way that I need to fight to get the win and get the prize at the end of the day.
Somebody like you, people from PFL are going to be watching this fight. There are going to be people from the UFC that are going to be also watching this fight. What do you want them to know as you get ready to make this walk here in a couple weeks?
Just know that I'm ready. No matter the opportunity, no matter the stage, no matter the opponent, like I'm always going to be ready, no matter the result. Win or lose, like it's all on me, and I know that, so I'm going to be ready. I'm prepared. I have the skills. I have the mentality. I have all the intangibles, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to prove it.
One final question for you, and it'll be a fun one. Sean O'Malley, Cheeto Vera, who do you got?
I mean, I got to go with Cheeto. I mean, we've seen it before. I really like Sean O'Malley. I like his style. I like everything about him. I like the way he approaches the game from a brand perspective. Most importantly, I think he's one of the few fighters that is getting everything out of this that he deserves, and I think he's doing that intentionally. I know he's the champ now. I know he's had some stellar performances, and I'm not totally counting him out. But if I'm a betting man, I just have to go with the result that we've seen. With that being said, I think Sean has everything that it takes to win this fight as well.
Well, there you go. You heard it from Mr. Evans himself. And sir, I wanted to give you an opportunity. If there are any sponsors or anyone that you out there that you'd like to thank before I let you go, let's do it.
Yeah, I definitely love to thank my sponsorship team, Noodle House, Miley, Enterprise Contracting, Never Stop, Kim Calvin. The agency that I'm working with, they're phenomenal. Everyone back here that I've been training with back at home at Wolves Den, that's been just phenomenal. My training camp has been great. Sean Woodson, Andrew Mop Evers, the whole team there, and I'm excited for us to show up in MKE and put on the show.
Well, I appreciate your time this afternoon, David, and I look forward to having you back very soon.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me, and you have a good day.